Can I ask you a question? If you retired next year, would carrying a mortgage make you feel completely comfortable? Or would it just be one more thing sitting in the back of your mind every single month? That's a question more and more people approaching retirement are actually asking. And the answer isn't as simple as a yes or no. So today I want to walk you through how I think about this question and, just give you a framework that can help you make a more informed decision. And let me explain to you why this question matters, because retirement changes one major thing, right? Your money coming in. You don't exactly have money coming in every single month unless that, you have diversified investments. But in multiple cases of retirement, a lot of people don't have that kind of income coming in. When retirement approaches, it's vacation time. It's time with the grandkids. It's time to just sit back and relax, which is very much deserved. However, we have to think about what is actually happening. The income in a lot of cases has ceased. It has stopped. When you are in retirement, your income, what typically happens to your income? It becomes more fixed. Every recurring expense or payment becomes a lot more important, right? There's a little more sting to it as opposed to when you were working. For example, when you're working, a $2,000 mortgage payment might feel manageable because another paycheck is coming. You got that comfort, you got that cushy paycheck, right? In some cases, it might not even be cushy depending on your situation, right? We've all been there, unless you haven't. But retirement changes the game, right? Because now you're relying on retirement income, social security, investments, or even pensions. Every dollar leaving your account matters just a little bit more. Think of retirement like switching from filling a bathtub, right? Completely filling it up, and replacing that water and consistently filling it up with the faucet running, and it's all good and it's great. To transitioning to living off the water that's already in the tub. The water's there, you come back. The water's still there, and you're using what you used last time, and you come back, so on and so forth. When you're working, the water keeps coming in, right? The faucet continues to run, everything is smooth, the water gets changed, the water drains, and the faucet's continuing to run, right? And that's why cash flow becomes so important, because it's something that's actively coming in as opposed to just staying stagnant. And so here's where I think people sometimes ask the wrong question. The real question isn't, should I retire with a mortgage? It's, the better question should be, how will this payment affect the life that I want in retirement? What kind of life are you looking for to have in retirement? And so with the point on the mortgage, it's not necessarily bad, right? It depends on your monthly cash flow, your other debts, right? You got to consider your retirement income and your savings, as well as taxes, goals. You know what I'm saying? The goals that you have for yourself. So it's not necessarily the mortgage is inherently bad, right? So, but just as an example, person A, right? Let's call him Jerry. Jerry has a mortgage that's $1,100 a month, and say he's bringing in about $8,500 a month. Jerry's doing his thing, right? So very manageable. He has a lot of income coming in, and he's paying his mortgage, right? And person B, let's call person B Alex, right? Alex has a mortgage of $2,900 a month, and the income that he brings in is about $4,800. And so with those two incomes and mortgages, completely different story, right? But it's the same concept. But completely different outcome towards the end with how each of them manages their money and how each of them manages, what's coming in and what's going out. And the third part to consider, right, is think of debt like carrying a backpack, right? So imagine going on a 10-mile hike, which I could never, at least not yet, right? We're gonna get there. But one person is carrying an empty backpack on that 10-mile hike, and another person is carrying 40 pounds of bricks in that backpack, an absolute tank, right? And they both finish the hike. They both make it towards the end, but one of them is working a lot harder, right? Obviously, they're carrying the 40 pounds of bricks. So debt works the same way in retirement. It doesn't always stop you from getting there, but it can make the journey much heavier than it needs to be. So let that marinate for a second, all right? Let that marinate. Part 4 would be a common mistake that happens, another common mistake, which would be, I see people only focusing on their interest rate. And as you know, interest rate is definitely something to consider. However, people ask, should I keep my 3% mortgage. I think that's a pretty good percentage. I feel comfortable. There's a lot worse out there. And sure, that's one factor, but it's not the only factor, right? It's like you got to consider your monthly cash flow. Again, your monthly cash flow, your taxes, your liquidity, your peace of mind, and just the overall flexibility. So imagine someone with a low rate mortgage, but almost no monthly cash flow, still feeling financially stressed because of the money that's constantly leaving their account, right? And so part 5, cash flow is the hero. Cash flow is here to save the day. I've become convinced that cash flow is one of the most overlooked parts of retirement planning. What do I mean? Cash flow creates you options. It gives you options for your future. It gives you options for, more traveling. It gives you options to help your grandchildren if you have grandchildren, or even helping family, or helping the people around you, giving, handling emergencies, right? Having that emergency reserve. Overall, just an overall peace of mind. Just you're sleeping better. You're feeling more secure in the amount that you have coming in, right? Because it's not stagnant. It's a consistent flow, kind of like in the faucet example. Think of, I love analogies, and I'm going to throw a whole bunch at you. So just please bear with me. It's to help with the understanding, because it helped me understand. I'd like to share with you how to better understand these concepts that I'm throwing at you. But think of cash flow like oxygen, right? You don't really have to think much about oxygen. It kind of just happens, right? You don't think about it though until you don't have enough, and that's scary, right? It's the same thing with retirement income. The more flexibility you have each month, the more confident retirement tends to feel. You're not having to think about and stress about where the next dollar is going to come from. You know what I mean? It's natural as breathing. It's as natural as breathing. Yeah. So for part 6 of this video, I want to give a hypothetical example, right? Let's imagine a couple, John and Lisa, good old John and Lisa. We love them. They're both 60 years old. They're planning to retire in about 5 years, and they owe about $300,000 on their mortgage. They also have car loans and some credit card debt, and every month nearly $3,500 leaves their checking account just to cover their debt payments, okay? And they're not necessarily struggling, but they don't have much margin in that area, right? So their biggest concern isn't whether they'll retire. They're gonna retire, believe it or not. It's gonna happen. But it's more so whether they'll enjoy that retirement. So that's why understanding cash flow and not just account balances is super, super important. You have something coming in, nothing is remaining stagnant. Therefore, you can have that peace of mind, you can have that comfortability, but at the same time, it gives you room to leverage that cash flow into other investments, into, like I said, with giving and whatever you want to do. You have that the consistent cash flow coming in. So to wrap up this video, can you retire with a mortgage? Abso-freaking-totally. Many people do. But I think the better question to ask is whether that mortgage will support the retirement you want, or will it quietly limit it, right? These are the questions we got to consider, because every situation is different. That's why understanding your overall cash flow, your debt, your retirement strategy, it matters. It matters so incredibly much, because it just does. If this is something that you're thinking about, I put together a free guide called the Debt-Free Retirement GPS. And inside, I walk through several strategies that help you think differently about debt and cash flow and retirement planning. So you can download it using the link in the description. Anyways, that's everything. Thank you so much for spending some time with me in this video. Tune in for more videos as I talk more about debt and wealth and finances to better help and better suit your future and better prepare you for the retirement that you desire. Tune in for next time. Thank y'all so much. Be blessed.